Rick Leach, please proceed to the podium. Rick Leach, please bring the audience in. Let them know that we're beginning.
I'll definitely ping Steve. It'd be great to get together.
So where are you?
We're not going to put this on the YouTube.
You know, so they're pretty spread out. So we've got the way we do it is kind of a bit of a transformation. So because legacy really didn't get into this space with
Okay, we're going to get started as people are making their way back through. It was a great CEO walkthrough. I know I got to see everybody in the hall, so it was great to have it for an hour. Really appreciated it. Next up is really one of the most meaningful parts of the program, and it's such a privilege to talk about some of these wonderful young people that we help. If we could advance the slide to the scholarships, please. I heard at this last panel, for those of you who were here, some of these more mature organizations talk about their scholarship programs of $650,000 a year in awards. That's amazing, and we aspire to get like that. We have a very small and modest program, but we're growing. But even this modest program helps us help kids in a way that really matters. What we give them almost always results in a conversation that says, I almost had to turn away, particularly for those in the ProPilot degree program, where student loans don't begin to cover the expenses that are incurred. And they say, if it weren't for that scholarship that we got, I would not have been able to continue on with my studies, or I would have been turned away from this particular career path. Or they say, this allowed me to finally get my instrument rating and advance in my career. And it's not just pilots. We're working with dispatchers, aviation management, safety, mechanics, another profession in great need. So this really has a wide reach. And we had a record level of donations this year. It's enough for us to begin thinking about endowment for next year. So thank you very much. And we're going to appreciate our donors in just a moment here. But first, I think we're going to hear a little bit from our candidates. So these are this year's awardees, and in their own words.
My name is Kate Christensen. I'm a current student at Baylor University studying aviation sciences. And with that being said, ever since I was 9 years old, it's been my dream to become an airline pilot. I remember when I was 9 years old going on to my first flight and I got to step inside the cockpit, the fascination. However, that fascination has never left. It has only grown and fostered since. And with that being said, it's been my lifelong dream to become an airline pilot since. Next. Speaking of traveling when I was younger, ever since I can remember, I've always traveled on regional airlines. And I'm from a small town in South Dakota, which meant that regional airlines were my means of connecting me to different destinations around the United States. And that's the critical role they played in my life, and that's what they meant to me. They helped connect me to different destinations, and not only did they help connect me, I know they've had a meaningful impact on people in my community, helping connect us not only within the United States, but around the world. Lastly, this scholarship is going to contribute to my education by helping fund my commercial single-engine certification, which, once completed, will bring me one step closer to becoming an airline pilot and fulfilling the dream I've had since I was 9 years old. Lastly, I wanted to thank the Regional Airlines Association for their generosity and selecting me as a recipient of the 2025 Regional Airline Association Scholarship. Thank you all again, and I wish you all the best with the rest of your conference. Please take care.
I am a sophomore at Auburn University, majoring in professional life. Thank you, Regional Airline Association, for awarding me this prestigious scholarship and the opportunities it involved. For me, aviation has always been about the people, the life story that fills each seat, awaiting a new chapter, an opportunity for a reunion. Regional aviation is exactly that. It is not having to choose between the dream job in New York City and Christmas with your family. With regional aviation, you can have both. Thinking about it, we probably would not have so many good Hallmark movies without regional aviation. Our country is huge in terms of distance and diversity in both culture and geographic landscape. For me, regional aviation is a symbol of American unity, in which the beauty of national parks, college away from home, healthcare across states, and so much more is made possible for everyone here. Only a driver's license with a star, get your real ID guys, and a plane to get away. My aviation story would be incomplete without talking about mentorship. I want to thank Mark Hardy, an airline pilot who was the first to believe in me and is my biggest supporter. I also want to thank my other mentors, Pinky Patel and Dr. Coyote Bachman, along with my awesome peers and professionals who make the aviation community mine. And now, I have the honor of knowing that the Regional Airline Association is also in my corner. This scholarship is a matter of great pride, affirming me that I'm on the right path, and also a matter of great responsibility to continue RAA's mission of connectivity and community. I hope to use this scholarship to fund my flight training. Thank you, Mom and Dad, for doing that so far. I also want to thank my mom and dad and sister for all their support and for always being there. This scholarship also fuels my passion to be an airline pilot and a community mentor. Thank you, RAA, once again, and all the donors for making this possible, creating a foundation for the next generation of aviation built on merit, hard work, purpose, and kindness.
Hi, my name is Krista Foster, and I just graduated from Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University with a bachelor's in aeronautics, and in the next few months, I will be pursuing a master's in aeronautics at the same university. So I'm super excited. Regarding my aviation goals, I'm really looking forward to being a leader within flight operations. Ever since I joined the military as an aviation operations specialist, I have been very passionate about aviation, and more so the behind the scenes of tracking a flight from point A to point B and making sure that it's as safe as possible. And I really want to mentor others and support others because I have seen how much that has impacted me positively, and I really am looking forward to putting forward that same effort to helping someone else's journey. Now, what regional aviation means to me, it means connecting smaller communities and places together without having to go through the hurdles of, the inconvenience of having to go to a larger airport, especially for people that are in those communities that don't have the capabilities to do so. It makes it so much easier. It creates jobs for smaller areas and regions, and it's very much needed. And I have actually found my start in the civilian side at a regional airline. So I know the benefit that it also has for people in their early career. How this scholarship will contribute to my education, I'm telling you, it is going to make a huge impact. It takes off the financial burden. I'm able to do more, learn more, purchase more educational resources. This scholarship will contribute to my future career aspirations because I'll be able to take certain classes that will get me to the point of being a leader that is needed within the aviation industry. So I am very thankful for being a recipient. I am looking forward to making a difference and an impact and making the most out of this contribution. Thank you so, so much.
Hello, my name is Michaela Gower, and I'm a student at Arizona State University, where I study Aeronautical Management Technology and train in the Navy ROTC program to hopefully become a naval aviator someday. My aviation goal begins with serving my country as a military pilot, and later continuing my career as an airline pilot. I'm especially drawn to the regional airlines because my connection of smaller communities and supporting economic growth and bringing people together in ways that make it a real difference. Now, regional aviation means more than just flying airplanes to me. It represents service. It's about making sure that families, businesses, and communities are connected, even in places that larger carriers may overlook. It also inspires the next generation of pilots by showing that aviation is not just about transportation, but about opportunity and community. This scholarship helps me continue my education, build my skills, and stay on the path that's towards these goals. I believe that aviation is a way to serve others. This award strengthens that belief and gives me both the support and encouragement I need to keep moving forward. Thank you to the Regional Airline Association for investing in students like me and giving me the chance to grow in this profession that I love.
I never watched these videos, but but what's clear is that this is a real impact that we're making on real people. And that's made possible by you, the real people in our community, and who fund this. And I want to make special recognition, please, next slide, of several individuals who donated at such a generous level that we were able to fund an entire scholarship. And that is to the folks at Commute Air, and Mark Foundation, Bill White, and Zachary Hall. So each of them donated an entire scholarship this year, and their commitment is opening doors and saving lives. And if you heard these young people talk, they're all talking about ways that they themselves are going to pay it forward by mentoring, by helping to keep the door open behind them. So you all deserve a round of applause as well. Thank you. And our next panel today, it is my privilege to introduce our Communications Director, Natasha Marquez, and she will be joined by several luminaries who represent a really important sector in the regional industry, and that's cargo. Often we have a focus on passengers and getting people where they need to be, but it's also getting not just packages, but medicine and other life-saving equipment, and the packages where they need to go. And that is airports of all sizes. So Natasha will be joined by our chairman, Tim Combrick, CEO of Empire Airlines, Lauren Beyer, president of the Cargo Airline Association, Jim Goddard, who is president of the Regional Air Cargo Carriers Association, and Tim, I think you were chairman of that association as well, and Dante Smalls, who is a senior vice president in global public affairs with UPS. Please join me in welcoming our panelists. I'm going to take this podium.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Faye, for that introduction. I don't know if this mic is on or not. Welcome everyone to this conversation. It's one that I really love, and it came to life back in the days, because before I joined RA, I worked at UPS. That's something I'm going to say later on. But I'm pleased to be with the chairman of our board, Tim, here with me today. He has over 5 decades of experience in aviation, so thank you for being here with me today. Next to me, I have a very good friend and colleague and former UPSer, Dante. He works on the trade and aviation side of the business, but we're going to put you down to talk about regionals today. And then we have Lauren Beyer, president of the Cargo Airline Association. Previously to her role, she worked for A4A and TSA and Homeland Security. And last but not least, Jim is the president of RACA. Before joining RACA, he worked 34 years for another RA member for Cape Air. He did a great job over there, and he's happily retired now, but not really being with RACA. So. I know you didn't want me to say that about him. So I kind of want to start the conversation and open it up for all the panelists on how do you uniquely see the role and the opportunity in the market for regional airlines when it comes to like rural communities and last mile delivery?
Well, that is what we do. I mean, and we do it for integrators like UPS, and FedEx, and DHL, and it allows those very, very important companies to complete the distribution network, especially for the overnight product. And if you think about it, in a small community, that's the one that brings your medicines in, it's the one that brings your testing from the lab, it brings the blood, it brings very critical supplies, in addition to all the other things it takes to support a remote community. And so we are exactly obsessed with the last mile, and it's a very interesting business because we're exposed to a lot of different communities, and we're going into the small cities and sometimes in the remote areas, and so that's what we do, and we love it.
You can see why we have partners like Tim in the business and represent the issues well. For us, and you will see kind of the larger metropolitan airports, you'll see kind of a lot of the passenger mainline carriers there. You will find kind of the cargo carriers usually not directly in those airports. So, you know, we're not at O'Hare, we're not at Midway, we're at Rockford. And so we try to find ways to connect those communities, as Tim noted, ensuring that those critical supplies arrive where needed. But also there are a lot of advantages to those areas as well, from even just being kind of there from a cost perspective, from an access, from tools, from training. And then what's really important is the ability to kind of transform those communities when you arrive there, providing those services as well. So, you know, we try to, of course, with everything, it's a business decision, but the impact that we have in those communities is sometimes exponentially larger than you have in kind of the larger metropolitan areas.
Well, it's always a little difficult to go after one of your members, but I'll do my best. No, I think just to add to what Dante's saying, the bottom line is the regional carriers are really integral to my members' ability to deliver to every community across America. You know, for the express carriers in particular, I think the regional carriers are able to operate to points that may be too far or too remote for reliable ground transportation from some of the hubs, Rockford or any of the others. And then, you know, as all of you I'm sure know very well, rural airports also tend to have smaller runways, and smaller runways means smaller aircraft that the larger operators simply don't fly. Even if those airports can support the larger aircraft, sometimes the volume just doesn't justify those larger aircraft entering that community. I think that partnership with the regional carriers has only grown in importance over the last 5+ years that we've seen this e-commerce boom. We talked about a lot of critical supplies already, but I think from an e-commerce perspective, you know, whether a customer is living in a population-dense urban city or in the most small remote community in America, those customers want reliable and fast delivery services. And it's really the regional operators that play a huge role in helping us deliver for those customers.
I'm excited for both the small communities and our members on how to take advantage of these new technologies to deliver even better service. I look at our members, and we still have the first generation founders who are solving problems in their communities to get goods and services there quickly. Regional Airline Association does that awesomely with people, reliably, safely. But if you get a doctor there without the, you know, the part to fix a machine or medical equipment or anything like that, it doesn't do any good. So I'm excited, new technology, purpose, working with the major partners to help our members take advantage of our communities. Take advantage of that.
And I have a question for you, Tim. I'm going to be on this question. Being our only online member base cargo carrier, what challenges do you see operationally on a daily basis, and what opportunities you're seeing like in this market to like continue to improve for better service for the customers that are waiting on this like last mile critical delivery sometime?
That's a really good question. We heard today various really good panel discussions. One of them was on ATC and the NAS system and those type of things. And obviously, a lot of those issues on a smaller scale, especially when we were talking about uncontrolled airports, non-towered airports, airports that don't have maybe an adequate weather system and stuff. Those are probably some of our biggest challenges. Our airplanes are well equipped. They're equipped to do whatever it takes to fly wherever we need. We got modern cockpits, we got great state-of-the-art equipment, and are continuing to upgrade the airplanes as technology changes. So the airplanes are capable of a lot, but we go into airports that we can't utilize all that technology. And then I also know that we fly up in Alaska, and some of it's rural flying, some of it's point-to-point. Anchorage to Fairbanks. But we're well aware of the challenges up in Alaska. And Dan is a member of RACA here. I'm putting him on the spot. He flies one of the largest regional airlines in Alaska. And the issues that they have up there with technology is huge. Good enough that Secretary Duffy made a special visit up there to make a commitment to improve the technology, the weather reporting, and the other things that Dan and his other companies up there do. So we are very acutely aware of those things, very supportive. Again, much of my flying is in the western states, so we're dealing with a lot of the same airports that Horizon and SkyWest are, and even smaller airports beyond that. So I think that's a huge issue and very important to us. We are fortunate that we have good ATC coverage from a radar standpoint, but it's the approach segment, it's the airports, it's the traffic, talking about congested airport traffic patterns and mixing in with firefighting aircraft and corporate jets and everything else, and not having any tower control, not having everybody on the radio and doing those things. So I think that's one of our biggest challenges. The rest of it is what everybody else faces when they fly. It's you fly in ice, you go in weather, you go back. We're all going to do that, do it very safely, very efficiently.
Thank you. Laura, now I'm going to be on the spot before your member. So, is workforce availability an operational challenge for larger cargo carriers, or is it just other challenges that they're currently facing?
Yeah, I think, the regional carriers and the large integrators, the large carriers actually have, in cargo world, a symbiotic relationship in this respect. It's not just about all the goods that are delivered, but also about pilot supply. Historically, some operators, of course, have seen fluctuations in pilot supply. I think right now, for our members, pilot supply is stable, and part of that very well may be some of the pathway programs that have been designed to mitigate potential future shortage. So UPS has their Ameriflight partnership. FedEx has Purple Runway with Tim and Empire and several other carriers. ABX Air has a partnership with air cargo carriers. Atlas also partners with Ameriflight. And these pathway programs are really designed for the pilots to gain that turboprop experience, deliver for the rural communities in need. And over time, when the criteria is met for the respective programs, they have a leg up, and they have the ability to go and interview to move up to the Part 121 carrier.
Thank you. So now I know this is a topic that Jim loves. You kind of brought it up earlier, but it's kind of for everyone on the panel. How do emerging technologies, we're seeing like drones, eVTOLs, other electric aircrafts, and having some here today, fit into the broader ecosystem when it comes to regional air cargo and getting to those vast and rural communities in the U.S.?
Well, yeah, I think it complements what the air carriers are already doing. It provides different avenues depending on weather. If runways are isolated for days, that they don't have the resources to thaw them out. That last mile medical equipment can get there through whether it's a drone, and I know there's policies being reviewed right now, or NPRMs on visual line of sight to help promote that. So I think all these different technologies, whether it's your sponsor electric here with short field electric takeoff and land, can open up a whole new avenue for new members, new competitive, or larger older members who can adapt to those new technologies. It can only help communities excel, and I think that's the name of the game. New economies to start, businesses to start, free enterprise. So I think if the adoption rate is going to be depending on a lot of government policies and regulations, and hopefully these private enterprises can keep funding through that process. And then I think our members will have to rely pretty significantly on the major carriers to help fund that. Those are expensive transitions, capital costs for equipment, training. The margin on a lot of our operators is not that big, so investing in that technology themselves, they will need help, whether it's credits from the government or, like I said, just a larger community help. I do think that investing in our rural communities, whether it's through infrastructure or charging or adapting hydrogen or whatever it is, it's not charity. It's promoting the economics of our ecosystem and freight delivery.
I mean, we completely supportive of that. UPS, we have a partnership with the eVTOL company called Beta, where we, plan to purchase aircraft. But as just noted, the regulatory environment has to be such that it allows for growth in that. These are entities that have to respond to their respective investors, and so if they're not seeing a level of kind of runway in which this will be successful, the funding for that could dissipate. And so it's incredibly important that, throughout the safety, the lens of safety always, that you make sure that these technologies allow for the safety of reduction into the NAS, but you need to ensure that there's a relative quick timeline to confirm them there. But to the point that was made earlier, we've got to make sure that there's a partnership with the ecosystem so that the regional airlines, the mainline carriers, cargo networks, all of them, this is an ecosystem we all want to be kind of successful in. And so finding ways to ensure that that happens is going to be critical.
Following up on that, Dante, I know UPS is a big global network, and you have not only the airline side, but you also have the fleet side. And how do you work on those partnerships, especially when it comes to regional carriers being able to support that, because you have this massive infrastructure?
I mean, as a globally integrated network, and we've got roughly 2,000 daily flights going around 700 airports. It's just important that we leverage both the ground and the air side of that business. And working with our regional airline partners is critical. The technology is what allows us to really make that work. And we've got a number of kind of AI solutions that allow us to, you've probably heard the thing where UPS drivers, don't make left turns. But all that is kind of compiled into a data system that ensures that we can take miles off the road. Because as we always say, the greenest mile is the mile that you don't travel. And so working to make those systems and integrating technology to do it, but also for the customer experience is critically important to do it that way as well. So we try to use AI to help us. It's kind of determining where our unit load devices could potentially be in the network and how to move certain kind of fleet positions. And so, we see it as a complement to help us, improve the efficiency of the network.
May I jump in there? Because I was going to say before Dante brought up AI, how could we talk about tech without somebody mentioning artificial intelligence, because it's at every conference, it's at every event, it's on the minds of every policymaker in DC. So I'm really glad that Dante brought it up. I would just add, from some of the other operators on the AI front, we're also using it for things like how to better predict customer preferences in places like rural communities. AI-driven analytics to help, identify and mitigate safety risks. We're using it for, all sorts of ways to complement the network. Route planning is a great use of AI as well. Help us predict the traffic, the weather delays, the package density, all so that the operators have the ability to more dynamically adjust.
Perfect, and that kind of goes to the question I was going to put you on the spot next, which is what innovations either work, whether aircraft technologies, digital platforms, AI, Our work promising for enhancing like air cargo-based operations. I don't know if there's any other.
Well, I mean, beyond AI, sure. You know, especially for this particular discussion, things like real-time last mile tracking, giving the customer the ability to know that parcel's location, to know when the delivery window will be, to know if the delivery schedule has changed. Those are really important tools. Predictive modeling. Is there going to be a flight delay? Do we need to take steps to ensure there's not a temperature breach on that important medical shipment to that rural community hospital? It's a really exciting time, actually, in the cargo space.
How do you see it, Jim?
How
do you see it, Jim, from that standpoint of like the digital platforms and the automation coming into place?
Well, I think it's brought our airlines closer together to work together with the digital platforms and things like that. I just have to agree with what Lauren said from the larger carriers, and a lot of the logistics requirements come from them on how to operate the business correctly from a business point of view, not from an operational point of view. But I think that's very important for our members to understand that and collaborate with the customers.
So I'd like to add a little bit here. I don't know as much about the AI because for me, my customers do all of that work. And Lauren's exactly right. They're using it extensively. And my customers, and I think UPS and the others have been looking at really how to optimize and adjust their systems to the new e-commerce and all of the other things going on. And it's changing a lot of things out there for us, feeder carriers, zip code carriers, and we're seeing changes in routing and changes in where airplanes fly and changes on how the cargo flows and so on and so forth. And that's driven out by this massive work that's going on behind the scenes is optimizing the system, and not just to make it more efficient for FedEx or UPS, but more efficient for the customer. And our job as feeder carriers is to respond. We literally do what our customer asks as long as it's safe and legal, and we can do it. And that's why they employ us, because we can be flexible, we can be quick, we can move airplanes around, we can do a lot of things that you might not be able to do in bigger carriers. So it's an exciting time. I think in the industry we're all waiting for it to kind of settle out. It hasn't been without its pain, kind of, but it is. I think it's absolutely one of the best things I've seen going on in the industry right now. Because when we come out the other end of this, when UPS and FedEx and everybody's going to benefit from it, and it's also going to help control the cost to the consumers. So we're excited to do that. And in addition to that, our customer keeps giving us brand new airplanes, brand new ATRs, brand new Cessna aircraft, and investing in the new technology. So we're not just flying 30-year-old airplanes out there. We're flying the latest technology, and that tells me they're very committed to the long term on this. So.
Perfect. That's kind of a perfect segue to my next question. What partnerships were on the e-commerce side, on ground carriers or local airports, are essential into building this resilient last mile network, and what you were mentioning about like continuing to improving to be able to better serve those?
I think one of the biggest things we see is the lack of airport facilities and space, especially in some of these smaller airports. And it constrains our partner from the amount of flights, what we could put in there, where we could put it in there. And we look at airports to where if there was a, 4 more parking spots available, we take them and that type of stuff. So the airports are playing a big part in this, especially the small ones. And they typically, I don't want to say we're neglected, because we're not, but we don't get the same attention or the same funding that you do as a passenger carrier. So if UPS goes and wants to get something done at an airport, we're going to approach that differently than United would if they went in and did the same thing. So I see that as a constraint, and I don't want to say it's a safety issue, because if we can't get them in, park them in there safely, we're not going in there. I mean, we're just like anybody else, safety first. The rigor that we put into planning a ground operation along with our partner is tremendous, you know. We do all kinds of data analysis and so on and so forth. But I see that as a pretty big problem. And it's getting worse because in a lot of airports, the demand for the passenger side is growing. And they're turning down facilities that we used to be able to use. They're extending terminals into it. They're doing a variety of things. So I see that as a fairly significant item.
And if I could just add, for anyone who may not have seen it, GAO actually relatively recently published a study on congestion concerns for cargo.
Oh,
So, yeah.
I'll look for that one. Thank you.
Also, just from kind of, I think the funding piece is important. So as we're looking at the kind of investment that it seems that's going to happen as it relates to air traffic control and others, ensuring that there's a focus on where the congestion is, but to Lauren's point, not just making the assumption that the congestion is only where the passenger carriers are, clearly from a cargo perspective. But in terms of some of the challenges, we also need to make sure that we're communicating directly with the airports and the communities in these areas where we're serving to make sure that we can understand the needs. Understanding what is the workforce capabilities, or the things that we can be doing in terms of partnership to ensure that there's the right level of training for the folks that you're going to need in that. And that's why the work that Regional Airlines Association and FAA and others are doing to kind of bring in the next generation of leaders and not just focus on only pilots, although those are really critical aspects of the job, but looking at folks who are on the ramp, folks who are doing all the different components from an air traffic control perspective. So that's going to be key in making sure that you've got those resources. And the time horizon to get there, you can't just say, next week you're going to be training. We're seeing this from the customs side. You're going to hire the customs folks, and once you have them, it's going to take months of training. And so making sure that we're doing this from the time horizon to get caught up in the deficit that we're seeing in certain areas.
Definitely, we even heard one of the scholarship recipients mention small communities, air service, and all of that. So I know we have talked about funding, we have talked about ATC, and all the partner reports and those challenges. But what about on the policy and regulatory side? What changes do we need to see being implemented, or what regulations we need to take into place to be able to continue to expand on the opportunities that are out there? Because there's a lot of opportunity on the like rural America and like small last mile delivery air service.
From the stability perspective, businesses kind of thrive on a stable environment, and so I think the moment we can kind of get to that point will be helpful, and then making sure that we've got the resources to do that. I think if you look at some of the policies and regulatory policies that are coming out of the FAA, just ensuring that they've got the time horizon to get those kind of completed in a timely fashion. We've talked a little about kind of eVTOLs, the SFAR for that, and some of it. So there are different components that are happening currently that we'd like to just kind of see happen more quickly. I think that will help us get those new entrants safely into the airspace and allow some of those kind of creative solutions that you mentioned.
I would add, this morning's panel talked about the positive feeling about ATC. It's going to take time, and there seems to be movement on all fronts, and the safety issues happen. That does happen. We all know that. But from a new technology or new fleets or things like that, if you go back to when the Part 23 rewrite started back in the early teens, I think it was released in 2017, performance-based. And so I think that helps a lot of new entrants come in. You have, I think, the executive order for AMM and VTOL and working with the public-private operators who are using this equipment, whether it's detect and avoid radars or ADSB, upgrade those. So I think working with private organizations who are developing these technologies to help develop these policy regulations at a quicker pace is very important, and that's what seems to be what's happening. And you know, we can sit here a year from now and see how far they've come, but they've got the data and they've got the way to do that. But I think that's really positive.
The only thing I would add to that, quicker pace, yes, but while we maintain the more holistic view of how all of these regulations work together. We're talking about ATC modernization, we're talking about integration of new entrants, we're talking about 5G, we're talking about, Dante knew I was going to mention it, we're talking about 5G, we're talking about ADS speed, you know, all of these things have an impact, and so we just have to make sure that that it's evaluated in a whole and system manner, and that those the sequencing of any of those things is taken into close consideration.
I would just note that it's exciting all these things are happening, but it's critical that we're talking kind of to our people and our respective teams about it, because that change can seem for a lot of folks, you know, change can be challenging, it can be fearful, and so just ensuring that you explain how these technologies will help enhance your role, will help create new opportunities, making sure that those communications are happening upfront and happening constantly.
And definitely, now that you talk about teams and having, like we have mentioned before, and you have mentioned a few of the innovations that you're working on, like beta and all of that, what other things that UPS is doing or looking into, et cetera, do you think will fit more into like the multimodal carriers, building partnerships and for essential cargo, for things such as when it comes to the network that you have built on the UPS healthcare side, of the way that you track your package from one end to the other, but getting to those rural areas, how are those things that you're doing that can really continue to be expanded, but that within your network can also be applied to other regional cargo?
Well, I think from a technology perspective, we've leveraged it through some of the communication components that we've had. But we've kind of looked at where the density is in regional areas, and so, you know, Louisville is where our kind of air hub is based. And one of the reasons why it is there is because we can get access to basically 2/3 of the country in roughly 24, 36 hours. And so, you know, that's kind of why we, you know, have to position that location. But we've seen this in other areas as well where the airports are. But we also understand the importance of getting critical, sorry, I think I drank something that, yeah, I'm very passionate about yeah, I'm very passionate about regional airlines. But making sure that we're getting into those communities, getting those critical supplies. The healthcare business that Natasha mentioned is important to us from the healthcare logistics side. And we also have, in a lot of cases, a lot of space to actually house those warehouses, to do that and bring other businesses into those communities, actually creating a thrive. We call it in whirlpool, kind of a whirlpool effect. So, you know, there are a number of businesses that go to Louisville just so they can have access to the region and the regional access in a matter of that kind of 2/3 of the country in 24 or 36 hours that I mentioned. But we're seeing that in other areas, whether that be Rockport and others. And so I think trying to find ways to bring those more holistic solutions in.
Well, you keep mentioning 2/3, and I must tell you, regionals are in 2/3 of the U.S.
There's
I need to
synergy.
plug in my
There's synergy.
Yeah. Yes. So kind of like looking ahead, like the future state of where like what we're seeing is like new technologies coming into place, regional air cargo, and this is gonna feel like an interview, job interview kind of thing. Where do you guys see this going into like the next 5, next 10 years in terms of like going back to the time of our panel, going to those really niche rural areas in America? And it's open to you.
Well, it's up to him.
So I mean, it may not be the answer that folks may want to hear, but you know, we have to go where kind of the business and the volume is, right? And so I think finding ways to make sure that, rural communities, suburban communities, have thriving economies to be able to support companies coming in is going to be important. And so, trying to make sure that we're doing policies that ensure that the overall economy is healthy, but also that we're putting in the resources so that you don't have kind of brain drain in communities so that people are leaving them and no one's going. So it becomes this holistic ecosystem that, if you've got the resources and the people and the training there, we'll be there. And I know that someone will make sure that happens.
Yeah, for us, it's like, again, we're customer driven, so it's going to depend on what UPS and FedEx and everybody wants, but what you can stand back and look at is new technology will play a role. I firmly believe that for many of these platforms that are being built, whether they be unmanned, electric, hydrogen, whatever they are, that many of them are going to be tested first in the feeder system. They're going to be smaller planes, they'll be 2,500 pounds, 3,000 pound payloads. I know some of our members in RACA have already been working with certain companies on testing this type of technology. I know that FedEx itself is working with reliable logistics for an unmanned caravan, and they're not reliable, it's not the only one doing it, but they're going to reliable actually has a feeder system route out of Albuquerque that when their technology advances enough, they're going to use that as a real life test bed going live out of Albuquerque, New Mexico, flying probably 5 cities out there. So that technology is coming. We're going to have to learn to adapt. We're going to have to learn how we can be part of what's going on. And I think you said a very important thing. We need to keep our employees are informed of what's going on, because some of these things are really fearful. I mean, it's stuff they really worry about because they think their job's going to go away or it's going to affect their lifestyle or whatever. So I think that's important. And I think we will still be working very hard on recruiting and training talent, pilots, mechanics, dispatchers, and everything else that we've talked about in here, because I mean, right now we're feeling pretty good, but it's the first time I felt pretty good in 7 years. And I have been in this business long enough to know that this stuff is cyclical. And I know Bill's sitting out there nodding his head at me. He knows exactly what I'm talking about. We could end up with a pilot mechanic shortage just like that. We're just on the edge of maintaining right now. And everybody's going, ooh, yeah, that's good. The majors aren't hiring, the regionals aren't picking up as many of our people. That's going to turn around. So that's going to be our biggest focus in 5 to 7 years, is continue to be able to be there and be able to safely man, crew, maintain, dispatch those airplanes, whether they be unmanned or whether they have pilots.
Well, I think what Tim is saying, Tim is always brilliant, but what Tim is saying in particular on communication with the workforce and what these technologies mean is really important. And if we talk about some of the examples that I provided earlier on how we're using AI, all of those were about enhancing the customer experience, about giving the customer more transparency on their shipments. It's about giving our safety workforce more tools to better evaluate and get ahead of potential risks in the system. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about these technologies.
I have one question for Jim. I've been working with our airline member, K-Fair, and now that's more on the passenger side, and I'm moving into the cargo side with RACA. What synergies have you seen, or what learnings can you do from like passenger to apply to cargo when it comes to such small communities?
It's all essential. I mean, it is small community service. It's you call it essential air service in the passenger side, but it's just as essential, but from a commercial standpoint, a business standpoint, on the delivery side. You know, so I really take a lot from the 35 years of Cape Air and try to understand what our RACA members go through, whether it's Alaska operators who have to plan barging their fuel to remote sections 6 months in advance to be ready for winter because there's no support structure there. Those are all logistic things that happen throughout the country. No matter, Alaska, New England, Caribbean, there's always these different challenges in these different airports. A lot of them uncontrolled, some of them unapproved strips. You have to get the product there. You have to help the community. So I, in my lifetime, as a Cape Air, really brings a lot to help all of our members. I hope, anyways.
Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
I have
on
final
time
thought.
now.
So I want to thank not only for RACA being here, I think it's really important, but Faye and RA, the associations that you've had here today. We all have that one mission to fly safely. We all do it in different ways, but it's the one purpose. So bringing them here today, having a conversation about all different aspects is very important.
Thank you.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Natasha, and your fantastic panelists illuminating such a critical part of our shared system and network. We're doing a group photo. I'm going to keep talking while we do the photo. So just a couple of bits of housekeeping because I know you all want to get in your cocktail attire. We're going to be back here for the dinner. And that starts at 7. Before that, we're going to have a happy hour next door in the Hall of Partners. We can't wait to see you, and we're going to continue to celebrate our 50-year history and talk about what's next to come. So we'll see you back in the Hall of Partners at 6 o'clock. That's a wrap. Thank you.